It was a quiet Saturday morning when the shrill voice broke through the hum of the generator like shattered glass. "That disgusting machine has to go." I was crouched on the porch, adjusting the settings on the backup generator that powered my daughter's ventilator. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and blooming jasmine, but the intrusion of that voice tainted everything. I looked up, shielding my eyes from the sun, and saw her, trim, impeccably dressed, with a clipboard in one hand and a deep scowl etched across her heavily made-up face. "I beg your pardon?" I asked, standing to my full height. The woman stood at the edge of our porch, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "That thing," she jabbed a manicured finger toward the humming generator, "is a violation of our neighborhood aesthetic. Section 8 of the Mountain View Estates Covenant clearly states, 'No mechanical equipment visible from the street.'" I let out a slow breath. Not from fear, from discipline. Years in Delta Force had taught me to remain calm when confronted, to assess before acting. I wasn't on a battlefield now, but there were lives at stake. Specifically, my daughter's. "That thing," I said quietly, "is what keeps my daughter alive." Behind me, inside the house, Olivia sat in her wheelchair by the front window. Her soft brown eyes followed the woman, her expression already beginning to register concern. She couldn't hear every word, but she could tell from the tone. She was 12 years old, and far wiser than her age should allow, thanks to a life that demanded constant strength. Her ventilator tube was securely connected to the trach in her throat, the machine softly clicking and whooshing with every assisted breath. "I don't care what medical excuse you think you have," the woman snapped. "This is Mountain View Estates. We have standards. You can't just do whatever you want because of some sob story." I took a step forward, deliberately placing myself between her and the window where Olivia sat. My hands were relaxed at my sides, but every muscle in my body was prepared, not for violence, for control, for calm, for the deep-rooted discipline that years of elite military training had instilled in me. "My name is David Morrison," I said firmly. "And you are?" "Victoria Harrington," she said proudly. "President of this HOA for 15 years. And if you think you're going to ruin property values in this neighborhood with that monstrosity, you're sadly mistaken." "I see," I said, nodding slowly. "And what you don't see is that this generator is running because our power went out an hour ago. Without it, my daughter's ventilator stops. And she dies." Her expression didn't change. Not one iota of compassion flickered in her cold gray eyes. "Well, perhaps people like her should be in facilities better equipped for her kind of need." That was the first moment I felt the shift. Not in the air, but in myself. A tightening. A decision point. I didn't move. Not yet. But every part of me was screaming internally. "You've entered my property without invitation," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "You've insulted my child and demanded I disable life-saving medical equipment. That's not enforcement of a covenant. That's harassment." Olivia tapped gently on the window behind me. I turned and saw her pointing to her tablet screen. It read one word: scared. I offered her a soft smile, hoping to reassure her, and held up my hand with the Delta Force gesture for "everything is under control." Victoria didn't notice. She stepped further up the porch, scanning the area like she owned it. "You're new here," she said with distaste. "We have rules, and I won't let newcomers start bending them." I straightened my shoulders and looked her in the eye. "The Americans with Disabilities Act provides for reasonable accommodations. That generator is one of them." "No exceptions," she said, as if she were quoting scripture. "The rules are for everyone. If I let you break them, what's to stop someone else from putting a dumpster in their yard?" This wasn't about the rule. It was about power. I had seen that expression before, in the eyes of warlords, petty dictators, and insurgent commanders who used rules and force not to protect people, but to dominate them. This woman wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was asserting control. My mind flicked through tactical options, not because I planned violence, but because my training was always running in the background. Exit points, angle of approach, body language. I was mapping her threat level, not her intentions. Her intentions were clear. "I'm not moving the generator," I said. She tilted her head as if I were a disobedient child. "Then I'll be forced to fine you, $500 for the first day. It doubles each day it remains." I clenched my fists. "You think a fine is going to make me choose between your property values and my daughter's life?" She leaned in closer, her voice lowering. "Then perhaps you chose the wrong neighborhood to move into." My hand moved slowly behind me, resting on the doorframe to our house. "Miss Harrington, I'm going to ask you one time. Leave our property. You are not welcome here." "And if I don't?" she said, her lips curling. I didn't answer, with words. I let silence speak. For a moment we stared at each other. I saw no empathy, no shame, no remorse. But I did see something new. Curiosity. She couldn't understand why I wasn't backing down. She didn't know who I was. That was fine, she would. From inside the house, Olivia's ventilator gave a short alarm beep, then stabilized. But it was enough to catch Victoria's attention. "What is that racket?" she asked, clearly disgusted. I looked past her. "That racket is the sound of my daughter continuing to breathe." "Well, it's disturbing the peace," she said flatly. I had been in firefights where RPGs flew over my head, in jungles so dark you couldn't see your own blood when you were hit. But I had never felt a rage so deep as I did standing there, being told that the life-sustaining sound of my daughter's ventilator was disturbing the peace. "You've made your position clear," I said, keeping my voice as even as possible. "Now leave before I call the police." Her eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. Victoria turned slowly, but not to leave. She reached into her purse. For a split second, I thought it was her phone. It wasn't. What she pulled out was a small, silver handgun. She didn't raise it. Not fully. But she made sure I saw it. "I feel threatened," she said, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "This is self-defense. You raised your voice to me." My heartbeat slowed, not sped up. That was my first sign that the years hadn't dulled my training. Small caliber, safety off, weak grip, poor trigger discipline. Her finger was resting. On the trigger, not alongside it. Classic amateur mistake. "You brought a gun," I said, "into the home of a ventilator-dependent child, because a generator disturbed you?" "I have a permit," she snapped. "I have every right to defend myself." "No one's threatening you, Miss Harrington," I said calmly. "But you are now threatening us." From the window, I heard Olivia's voice, barely a whisper through the glass. "Dad, scared." The ventilator beeped again. Longer this time. "Her oxygen's dropping," I muttered, stepping half an inch toward the door. "You need to leave now." "I'm not leaving until you agree to remove—" She didn't finish. She never got the chance. I moved. In one fluid motion, I reached, twisted, and pivoted. The weapon was out of her hand before she realized she'd lost it. I caught it, flipped, the safety, and had her in a restraint hold so precise and painless she didn't even yelp. She gasped. "What? How?" "Stay still," I said. To Olivia, "Sweetheart, can you reach your phone?" Even in distress, my daughter was a warrior. She pushed the emergency button and said through labored breaths, "A lady with a gun. In our house. Dad needs help." Victoria stopped struggling. Maybe it was the control in my voice. Maybe it was the calm. But more likely, It was the dawning realization of what she had just done, and to whom. "I'm Judge Harrington's wife," she whispered. "You don't understand. I didn't mean—" "You pointed a loaded firearm at a disabled child's life support system," I said coldly. "And you crossed the wrong line. And the wrong man." The HOA office had been dark for days, shades drawn, phones going to voicemail. But Karen Malone wasn't done. On a grey Monday morning, Dominic noticed something different. A black SUV idled just outside the property line, just beyond the "No Trespass" signs he'd posted. A man sat inside with mirrored sunglasses and a radio mic clipped to his collar. The SUV bore no official logos, only a small decal. BlackRock Tactical Solutions. Then came another. And another. Within 48 hours, 3 rotating vehicles began doing slow, deliberate loops along the dirt road that curved past his fence line. Dominic approached one, asking who they worked for. The man barely looked at him. "Just here to ensure community safety," he muttered. Dominic didn't buy it for a second. He made some calls. BlackRock Tactical wasn't a licensed law enforcement body. It was a private security contractor, known in Texas for ex-military hires and legally gray surveillance work. Karen had hired mercenaries to intimidate him, legally armed, uniformed, and protected by the thin veil of patrolling for safety. That night, Dominic stood on his porch, Izzy asleep upstairs, a Remington slung loosely over his shoulder. They could watch all they wanted, but they would not cross his line. And if they did, they would meet a man far more prepared than they imagined. Dominic met Alicia Romero at a quiet diner in Austin. She was sharp-eyed, mid-30s, with a calm precision in her speech that suggested courtroom experience and a no-nonsense attitude. She reviewed his documentation, videos, forged forms, emails, and nodded slowly. "This isn't just a dispute," she said. "This is systemic abuse. Pine Hollow Estates HOA isn't just enforcing fake rules. They're engaging in organized fraud." She pulled out her laptop and typed into a legal research database. In the past 2 years, they've acquired, 9 parcels. Each one had overlapping overlay filings, all within a similar format, all underwritten by the same notary who has since moved to Arizona. Dominic leaned forward. "You think they were doing this to flip the land?" Romero nodded. "Exactly. They buy land through manufactured HOA leverage, threaten the owner, drive down the value, then purchase through shell buyers. I'm looking at a family, the Yoders, same zip code. They were driven off with fake environmental violations. Their property's now a private golf club project." Dominic's jaw clenched. "How do we stop it?" Romero smiled grimly. "We file a RICO civil suit. Racketeering, fraud, conspiracy. Not just against Karen, but against every board member and fake buyer tied to those acquisitions." Dominic felt a shift then. The weight of helplessness was cracking. For the first time since returning home, he had a weapon just as powerful as theirs: the law and truth. Within a week, the courtroom filing made headlines. Vasquez v. Pine Hollow, HOA et al. Motion, temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction. Judge Lorraine Beckwith, known for her sharp wit and intolerance for overreach, heard the emergency motion in chambers. Alicia Romero presented footage of BlackRock Tactical circling the Vasquez property, documents of forged signatures, and CPS's documented abuse of anonymous complaints. "Your Honor," she said clearly, "this is not neighborhood squabbling. This is intimidation bordering on paramilitary harassment. My client is a father, a landowner, and a citizen. His rights are not suspended just because someone with money wants to erase his roots." Judge Beckwith looked over her glasses at Karen Malone's defense counsel. I've seen enough, she said. That afternoon, Dominic received the signed TRO, the Pine Hollow Estates, HOA, and any representative agents, including security firms, are hereby prohibited from contacting, surveying, monitoring, or attempting any enforcement actions upon the property of Dominic Vasquez, pending further investigation. Violation of this order will result in criminal contempt and immediate referral to the Travis County Sheriff's Department. Black Rocks. Vehicles were gone by morning. Dominic and Izzy stood on the porch as the road fell quiet again. You think they'll leave us alone now? She asked. He looked into the fields, then toward the old family barn. No, he said. But now they know they'll bleed if they come any closer. The email arrived anonymously. No sender name, just a message. You should see what she's been planning. I can't stay quiet anymore. Attached was a .zip file. Dominic scanned it for malware. Clean. Inside were dozens of emails between Karen Malone and a man named Robert Kessler, a developer from a multinational investment firm. 1. Karen wrote, "Once we flip the remaining properties on the East Tract, we'll be able to rezone the land for Phase 2 expansion. Kessler Holdings gets their retail space, and we can reallocate HOA funds into private stock purchases. I've already secured board votes. Vasquez is the only wild card. Handle him." Another. The fake CPS report didn't work. Security didn't scare him. If he stays, we offer him a buyout and non-disclosure. If he doesn't take it, we push the environmental violation angle. Dominic forwarded the emails to Romero. The next day, she filed a motion to freeze HOA assets and initiate a forensic audit of their finances. But it wasn't just the legal impact that struck Dominic. It was the betrayal. These people weren't misguided. They weren't misinformed. They were deliberate predators, and now the world would see them for what they were. The sun was setting in waves of gold and rust as neighbors trickled onto Dominic's property. Dozens at first, then over 100. Some brought lawn chairs. Others stood. A few had children on their hips. They came because the system had failed them. They stayed because someone finally stood up. Dominic climbed the flatbed trailer, used as a makeshift podium, and faced them. Many of you know me. Some of you remember my father, Carlos Vasquez. He built this barn with his bare hands. He grew food, repaired tractors for free, and taught me to protect what's ours. A hush fell over the crowd. For months I've been harassed, threatened, lied about. Not because I broke the law, but because I refused to bow to people who thought money made them kings. He paused. This land doesn't belong to developers. It doesn't belong to fake boards or signatures on forged paper. It belongs to those who sweat for it, who raise their children on it, who bury their roots deep and don't flinch when the wind turns cold. Applause swelled. I'm not just fighting for my daughter. I'm fighting for yours too. For every family who got a bogus fine. For every veteran who lost their house. For every grandmother threatened with eviction over a garden gnome. Laughter and cheers. Tonight we organize. We file complaints. We sue. We vote. We take back Pine Hollow, inch by inch, until there's nothing left of their lies but dust. The crowd roared. That night, Pine Hollow changed. It stopped being a collection of manipulated homeowners and became a movement. The email came late Thursday night, buried between legal notices and spam. The subject line read, "Media Inquiry, Family Rights and HOA Conflict, Request for Interview." At first, I considered deleting it. The last thing I wanted was more exposure that could make us a bigger target. But then I saw the signature. Maya Torres, investigative journalist, Channel 7, Dallas-Fort Worth. I did my homework. She was the real deal, known for uncovering corruption in city governments, school boards, and even local hospitals. She'd won awards for exposing elder abuse in nursing homes and illegal dumping by a major chemical plant. If anyone could bring daylight to what Victoria and the HOA were doing, it was her. Still, I hesitated. I didn't care about sympathy. I wanted protection. I waited until Olivia was asleep and called Maya back. "I'll talk," I said, "but only if you promise to focus on the facts. This isn't about me. It's about my daughter's life being endangered by people hiding behind policy and power." "I understand completely," she said. "I want to hear everything. And I want to make sure your daughter never has to live in fear again." The next day, she came with a small crew. No flashy van. Just a compact camera, a boom mic, and a quiet producer. We sat on the porch, me, Olivia in her wheelchair, and the ventilator softly humming in the background. I walked her through everything. The armed confrontation, the fake violations, the power shutoff, the emergency HOA meeting. I showed her the footage, the documentation, the fines. She asked one final question before leaving. "What do you hope happens next?" I looked down at Olivia's hand in mine. "I want them to be afraid of the truth." 2 days later, the piece aired on the evening news. A 4-minute segment titled, "Powerless Disabled Girl, Nearly Killed by HOA Decision." The footage showed Olivia's face, gentle, intelligent, fragile, and my voice explaining the chain of events. They played the audio clip of Victoria demanding I reconsider using the generator. They showed clips of her HOA meeting rant, and the moment she was caught in a lie on camera. Then came the avalanche. First, Facebook. Then Reddit. Then a link posted to TikTok by a disability rights advocate with a following of over 2 million. Within 24 hours, the story had been viewed over 1.4 million times. Hashtags began trending. Protect Olivia. White HOA abuse. OneCon rule enforcer, dad celebrities weighed in. A retired NFL player retweeted the story with the caption, "You mess with a veteran's kid, you're gonna lose." By the next evening, the mayor's office issued a statement. "We are deeply concerned about the allegations involving the Heritage Bluff HOA. We are investigating potential violations of civil rights and public safety statutes." Victoria went quiet. So did most of the board. But the damage was done. People who had been afraid to speak up before started knocking on my door. Families who'd been fined, harassed, manipulated into silence. They were ready to talk, and now they had a platform. A week after the story aired, the HOA called a special session. I arrived early, this time flanked by neighbors, people who once avoided eye contact now standing shoulder to shoulder. The vote was swift. Ballots were anonymous. But the outcome was clear. 83% of the homeowners voted to remove Victoria Harrington as president, effective immediately. Cheers broke out. People clapped. Some cried. Victoria didn't attend. But her vengeance came the next day. A knock on the door revealed a manila envelope shoved under my doormat. Inside was a lawsuit filed in civil court, Harrington v. Morrison, claiming defamation, emotional distress, and damages totaling $250,000. Filed by her husband, Judge Ronald Harrington, under the pretense that I had launched a smear campaign that jeopardized the safety and standing of a respected civic leader. It was petty. It was desperate. But it wasn't toothless, because Judge Harrington had influence, friends, power. I turned to Carla Nguyen. "This is their next move," I said. "They want to bleed me dry with court costs." She nodded. But they underestimated the power of public outrage. She countersued within 48 hours, on my behalf and Olivia's, invoking ADA violations, civil endangerment, and abuse of authority. The Harringtons had fired a shot, but I had launched a war. The courtroom was packed, local news crews set up outside. Disability advocates filled the back rows. The judge presiding over the case was not Harrington. He had recused himself after public outcry, but instead a visiting judge from Houston, known for her impartiality and intolerance for corruption. Victoria sat on the left, perfectly dressed, hands folded, expression tight. I sat on the right, Olivia beside me, her ventilator softly clicking, flanked by Carla and a wall of documentation. The prosecution, Victoria's side, opened with flowery language and crocodile tears. She has been harassed, they claimed. She has suffered immense damage to her reputation due to reckless accusations. Then Carla stood and played the footage of the confrontation. The threat. The gun. Silence. She showed the violation. Letters the utility shut off. The vote of no confidence by 83% of the neighborhood. Then she called witnesses, neighbors, the tree trimmers, even the responding police officer who admitted he was told to handle it quietly because of her status. And then Olivia spoke. She leaned into the microphone, eyes locked on the judge. She said I shouldn't live in a neighborhood like this, that I was too noisy to exist. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Victoria looked away. The judge's expression never changed, but her decision was swift. The judgment came down that afternoon. David Morrison versus Heritage Bluff, HOA, et al. Ruling. In favor of the plaintiff. The judge ordered $750,000 in compensatory damages and $1.2 million in punitive damages. The HOA's insurance would cover most of it, but the rest would come from a special assessment. Victoria Harrington was personally fined and referred for criminal investigation regarding the misuse of a firearm and reckless endangerment of a disabled minor. The story didn't end there. State lawmakers introduced Olivia's Law a month later, requiring HOAs to submit all health-related violation notices for review by a state-appointed ADA compliance board. By the end of the year, Olivia and I stood on the steps of the Texas state capitol. Reporters snapped photos as she smiled, genuinely, breathing easily in the warm sunlight. Someone asked me what I planned to do with the money. I answered without hesitation, build a better home, one where she never has to worry about noise complaints or power shutoffs again. The crowd applauded, but I didn't need their praise. I already had everything I fought for. Justice, peace, and the sound of Olivia's laughter in the wind.